Half a century's traffic has flowed past Brisbane's Regatta Hotel since the suffragettes rattled their chains in England. But today at the Regatta Hotel, women are still fighting for equality, the right to drink with men in public bars in Queensland in 1965. It wasn't a very expensive protest. The dog chain cost only 5 and 6, and the padlocks were only 2 bob each. But whatever the cost the women felt, it was the principle of the thing that mattered. If the publican served them with liquor, he faced a fine of 10 to 20 pounds. And so did anyone else in the bar who bought them a beer or even shouted them a brandy, lime and soda. Before detectives reached the scene, there was time to hand out propaganda urging men to clamour for women's rights to drink beside them. A few days later, over a non-alcoholic cup of tea, I heard about the protest from the women who made it, Mrs. Merle Thornton and Mrs. Rosalie Bogner, whose husbands are university lecturers. I asked why they chose the public bar issue.
Well, it's not that we think this is the most important issue of discrimination against women. There are many more important issues like the equal pay issue, but it's something we thought we could make a quick impact on, and we do think it's an important and significant issue, both in being a matter of legal discrimination against women, which is never trivial, always invidious situations arise out of this, and because of the social attitudes of protectiveness towards women involved in the attempt to keep women out of bars. We think this is very significant and bad. Women ought to have and ought to demand the right to discriminate between the conversations that they'll accept and the ones that they won't for themselves.
Well, when the policemen arrived, what happened then?
Well, at first the policeman asked us for the keys. We said we didn't have them, and we said we didn't know where they were. The police then asked for a hammer and smashed the padlock and asked us to leave. We said that we didn't want to leave, that we weren't breaking any law. We had read the Act, we had consulted a solicitor, and that it was quite within the law for us to remain in the bar as long as nobody served us with a drink. The policeman said, please don't make a fool of me, please go out quietly, I don't want to have to make a scene and carry you out bodily. And we said we were afraid that he would have to do this. He also told us in rather a fatherly way that we were breaking the law. If we would go and get the Act, he would show us exactly which line did apply. We still refused to go, saying that we did know the Act, we had read it, we had consulted a solicitor. And finally the policeman left saying, stay as long as you like, have a good time and don't drink too much.
Now, presuming you eventually get the right for women to buy liquor in a public bar in Queensland, do you think that many Queensland women are going to exercise this right?
I think quite a number are. Obviously, the day after it's made legal, there won't be a great movement of women into bars, although we'll see that there's some movement. But in 10 years' time, it'll be a different matter. Women are drinking in substantial, regular and increasing numbers in bars in Sydney and Melbourne. I've drunk there myself in bars and enjoying it. There are regular clienteles of women in these states. In time, there will be in Queensland. And we predict that what will happen then is that the women will become a little more broad-minded and the men a little more restrained in their bar behaviour, and this will have an entirely beneficent effect.
At the present time, women in Queensland can buy liquor in a lounge or in a beer garden, and there are plenty of those around. Now, do you think that there really is a case for women buying liquor in public bars?
Yes, it's a legal discrimination. Women should have the discretion to do what they choose in this matter. No one's going to force women into bars if they don't want to go, but they should have the right to go there. And awkward situations certainly do arise when a group of men from a business meeting or whatever it is are deciding to adjourn to the bar, and the woman has to either have the embarrassment of waiting to see whether they'll include her by specially deciding to go to the lounge, or she has to invent a headache to avoid the embarrassment. It's about time she stopped doing this. And also, it's an issue for, not just for professional and business women, but even more, although I think they're less conscious of it, for housewives who get left outside the bar while the husband, sitting in the car or something, while the husband goes in for a couple with the boys. One of the things that appalled me when I first came to Queensland was seeing the women standing around on the footpaths waiting for their men to come out of the bars in Queensland suburbs. I think this is really an intolerable situation. It's a very general one.
Many of Brisbane's most thriving hotels were built before the turn of the century. Since the war, though, Brisbane has made new steps into the realms of gracious drinking. But it's not over Brisbane's rash of glossy lounges or beer gardens that women have risen in protest. It's over their right to drink in a public bar with men.
Well, in a public bar, the men, they've been that used to talking free that if you brought women in straight away, well, I think it would spoil the whole idea of the public bar, because men have been that used to telling dirty jokes and things like that, and all of a sudden, a woman comes in a public bar, I think myself it would spoil the whole setup.
I would not like to stand next to any woman while I'm talking to a mate of mine, and I'll talk about something and I might say the wrong word at the right time, and I'd feel very embarrassed then, and it would...
But if the woman didn't feel embarrassed as well, would you still feel embarrassed?
I think I would, yes.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'd be against it, because after all said and done, we have women serving us behind the bar, so why shouldn't a woman be allowed to stand in front of the bar and drink?
Well, you look at the barmaids. I mean, they're busy. They're not just standing there twiddling their thumbs.
But they still hear a lot of swear words, don't they?
Well, I think they just hear them more or less in passing. I mean, they don't. They're not standing there listening to blue jokes or anything like that. They just do their work as anybody else and move on.
Well, I think that if it's going to promote any sort of more civilised drinking conditions in Queensland, I'm all for it.
Well, what do you think is wrong with the present system?
Well, I think it's highly antiquated, the way we've got to suffer this business with women drinking outside at higher prices. I'm definitely against women having to pay a higher price just to get a drink. Men can get a drink at $1 and a penny a glass, $1 and a penny halfpenny. Women got to pay 1 and 6pence, 1 and 7pence in lounges. Well, they earn less salary. Why can't they get a drink at the same price as men?
Oh, I've been around a bit. I'm a returned soldier, and that's the only place ever I've seen a place where a woman couldn't go into a bar and drink, because I think they're on an equal basis with me. They're over 21 and they haven't got the right to vote or anything else, but they should have the right to freeze themselves if they come in here.
How would you feel if your wife walked in here now and asked for a beer at the bar?
If my wife walked in, she'd walk in as a respectable woman and ask for a drink, and she'd pay the same money as me. She wouldn't have to go to another place to pay extra for the same drink as I'm getting.
I'm definitely against it.
Why?
Well, let's face it, bars I think were originally intended for men to drink at, and this is sort of the final threshold that they're trying to cross, I think, to infringe man's rights, I think.
Well, what is it about the bar that makes men want to come and drink here without women around them?
I think they get the company of other men. They say and do what they like. I think if you get women into bars, it's like having women at bucks parties and this sort of thing. You know, this is a private concern. We have lounges and things for women to drink at, and I can't see why they can't keep her.
Well, I agree with it. Absolutely agree with it. Right. Okay, I had a few drinks now, but it's a free country. I've been in England during the war, been in Singapore during the war, been in Siam, been in Malaya. They all drink with you.
The women who live closest to the issue are the women who work in the bars. The point they often made was simply no respectable woman would want to drink in a public bar.
Well, I don't think it makes a woman what a woman should be. I think it makes a woman a bit on the low side, drinking in a public bar.
You think you've got to stop them, though?
Well, that's up to themselves. I don't think you can stop them. They're not allowed in, and that's all there is to it.
Yes, but do you think you've got to stop them coming in?
I think so. When there's beer gardens and lounges for them to drink in, that's their place. I think a public bar is for men. When they come in, they have their conversation and talking, and I don't think a woman should be in there listening to what they're talking about. It's just general conversation they have.
But you're a woman and you work here and you hear what men say here. Now, don't you object to this?
No, well, we don't take much notice of what they say. We're too busy. We never listen to what they say. Working on one side of the counter and drinking on the other side are entirely two different things.
Just across the street from one of Brisbane's oldest hotels stands one of Queensland's oldest buildings with a liquor licence, Parliament House. At question time here this week, a Labor backbencher, Mr Harold Dean, asked whether the protesting women's husbands had been psychiatrically examined before being appointed university lecturers. Mr Dean told me,
"My first impression and first reaction to that photograph I saw in the paper, where the two particular ladies were chained by their ankles to the bar rail, was one of horror, for the main reason that I felt that the law was being deliberately flouted and contravened."
But don't you think, then, Mr Dean, that these women felt they had to demonstrate as the suffragettes did to get what they demand?
I believe that was one of the reasons that's been advanced for the particular action. But again, I think that day's past when that type of action and that type of behaviour is necessary today. We live in an enlightened age today, and I feel that they have other means at their disposal, more modern means and more effective means than resorting to practices that were necessary 100 or 200 years ago.
Would you be in favour of allowing women to drink in a public bar or buy liquor there?
Personally, in my own feelings, I would say no. But to be looking at it from a broad point of view and a point of view that each and every one of us has a right to please ourselves, well, I feel that they would have a right from their point of view, but personally, I wouldn't like to see them take advantage of anything like that and have an open go as far as women drinking in bars.
What reasons do you have for this view?
Well, for one thing, I think the prestige of womanhood is too high, and it's too valuable and too precious to be destroyed by a vulgarism, to use, for want of a better word. I think it is a vulgarism to stoop to such an action for women to want to frequent the atmosphere of a public bar. In other words, I don't think it's a place for a woman to be.
The man who said no to the women's demands is the Minister for Justice in Queensland, Dr Peter Delamoth. This week I asked him why Queensland discriminated against its women by forbidding them to buy liquor in public bars.
I believe that there's a very great difference between the public bars, generally speaking, in Queensland compared with other states. The drinking habits of the denizens of public bars are probably quite different, and we feel, as at now, that they're not suitable places for the gentler sex to make a habit of frequenting.
What do you think would happen if these restrictions were lifted right now?
I think that you'd probably get just a handful of women taking advantage of it, and their experiences with in a public bar would probably make them desist fairly quickly.
Well, in view of that, do you think there's any need to keep this restrictive law?
Well, I still believe that we've got to be chivalrous still towards women, in spite of their desire to achieve equality in all respects. And in my view, and in the view of most thinking males, we still regard them as the gentler sex that we should protect, even in minor degrees.
Mr Minister, when do you think women will no longer need to be protected?
I don't think ever.
Late one afternoon this week, the barroom suffragettes gathered in the heart of Brisbane to take another step towards freedom. Armed this time not with dog chains and padlocks, but bottles of beer wrapped up in brown paper. At 5 o'clock on Wednesday, Queensland womanhood was on the march again. The press had been alerted, and the TV lights were waiting, for the word had got around that women had found a loophole in the liquor laws of Queensland. It all began with orders for lemonade for the ladies, and this was strictly legal. They had the right to be here and the right to buy soft drinks. But the law came into question when the brown paper wrapper
dried up, I'm afraid. I wonder whether they'll fraternise.
The Equal Opportunities for Women Association had found the way, if not the right, to drink in public bars. And as the beer flowed and the reporters asked their questions, everyone waited for the licensing squad police to arrive. But the licensing squad police didn't arrive. They were phoned, I was told, with many enticing tip-offs, including one false lead that the women were playing two-up at the Royal. It all seemed to prove that women can drink beer in public bars in Queensland, provided they bring their own.